Thanks for joining me for today's tutorial, and I'm going to walk you through how to make this really easy shadow box. So the first thing you're going to do is open Design Space and click on New Project. Then we're going to go to Upload, and you're going to download the file from my free resource library, unzip it, and then we're going to go through the process right here to find that file and import it. Now remember, you do need to unzip it and make sure that you're pulling the right file. You're going to look for one that says Fist Bump Shadow Box -1. There is another file in there, and that one includes some hearts and a different font, so you can choose that one if you want, but for today's tutorial I'm going to show you how to do this one. The process is exactly the same. Now we've selected it, you can see what it looks like here, and because it's an SVG file, there's nothing else we need to do to it. We can just go to Upload. Now select your file and click on Insert Images. And there you go. Now you'll see it's all attached and together. We want to keep it this way for now because our next step is going to be to resize it. Alright, so to resize it, what you're going to have to do is go to your shadow box and measure the innermost area of the shadow box. My shadow box is exactly 11 inches on the inside, so while everything is still selected, we're going to go up here to Size, and we're going to change this to 11. To be a little safe, I might actually change this to, let's say, 10.95. And you'll see once we hit enter that both the height and the width are going to change. Alright, now everything has changed because everything is selected, which is great. We can leave it like this, or if you'd like to change the colors of this and see what it looks like before you actually assemble your shadow box, here's what you do. So you unclick to the side, and then you can select each individual layer and change the color of that layer to whatever it is you like. Alright, so to change the color of a layer, you just select your layer that you want to change, and then go right over here and change your color. And what you'll see is it'll change in real time and give you a chance to visualize what your shadow box will look like before you actually cut it out. This is a great thing to do for a project like this ahead of time when there's lots of colors, so that you can visualize what it'll look like before you start cutting it and not waste any of your paper. Something you'll see on the side here is you have this little picture over here. This gives you some indication of what it is you're selecting, so if you're not sure what you've got, you know what you're selecting, you can do that. You can also ungroup it if you like. You would click here and then you would click ungroup, and now you can actually move your pieces to the side if you'd like to see each individual piece. But that is not at all something that you need to do, it's just up to you. So let's go back to how we had it. The next step you're going to do, once you've got the colors and the sizing exactly as you'd like, you're going to click on Make It. Now this is a really simple project because all we're doing is cutting paper and gluing it together. There's no scoring, there's no rolling, really very little to do. Alright, so now we've got our next step here. You'll see each individual piece of paper that you're going to need to cut on an individual mat. If you've got multiple colors that fit on a mat together, they will get grouped together. But in this case, it's really going to be one sheet per mat. Alright, so this is a great way for you to get everything ready. You can see in this case I'm going to need 2 sheets of white, 2 sheets of black, a light blue, and a dark blue. Alright, now we're going to click continue, and I've got my dial set to custom, so it's going to automatically prompt me for what material I'm cutting. In this case I have medium cardstock already selected, which is favorited for me. If you don't have anything favorited, you're going to be looking for medium cardstock. Most cardstock is somewhere between 50 and 80 pounds. I'm using is about 65-pound weight, but any weight should do just fine for this project. So select medium cardstock. If you've got an Explorer Air 2 and you're not set to custom dial, just make sure that your dial is set to the cardstock. Now just to be safe here, I'm going to add more pressure. This is only an option on the Explorer Air 2 if you've got it set to the custom dial, but it's not absolutely necessary. Now when you look down here, load tools, it tells us that we need the fine point blade, which is great. So this is usually the standard blade. If you're new to using your Cricut machine, chances are this is the blade that you've already got in your machine. So unless you've changed your blade, you don't need to do anything special here. Now the next step here is going to be loading our cardstock in this order into the machine, and then clicking this button once it starts flashing. So we're going to switch over to the Cricut Explorer Air 2, and you'll see how we cut it and then assemble it. Alright, so the first color we need to cut is white, and you want to make sure that it's really nice and tight on your paper before you start cutting. If you don't, it is possible that it'll lift up off the mat and then not cut properly. Then you're just going to load your paper into your machine. You're going to see that this light is flashing. Just press that and your mat and your paper is going to load in. And then the next thing you're going to do, once you see the C, the cricket symbol flashing, you're going to click that and it's going to start cutting for you. Now once that's done, you just click the double-sided arrow again to unload. Now when you unload cardstock from your mat, you want to make sure that you flip it over and basically hold your cardstock down and pull the mat back. And that's to make sure that your cardstock stays nice and flat and doesn't get bent. And as you'll see, I actually ran out of white cardstock, so I'm using a single-sided cardstock and I'm just using the white side, and that works just fine. Alright, now for this next step, we're going to assemble all the pieces that we've cut out, and we're going to connect them. Instead of using glue, we're actually going to use glue dots. Alright, for this next step, we're going to assemble the pages that we just cut out on our Cricut machine, and rather than gluing them together, which would just make them really flat and not have a whole lot of dimension, we're actually going to put foam dots in between each layer. That's going to stick them together, but it's going to give them some dimension because it's going to leave a little bit of space in between each layer. Now these are some foam dots that I have from Amazon. They're really easy to find. I'll have the links for you. And as you can see, they're just these little circles that you're going to pop out and you're going to put in between each layer. So before we do that, let's just talk about the order of these layers. So this one is going to be all the way on the very bottom. Then next we've got our sky here. Next we've got the base of our fist. Okay. And then we've got our white, or in my case, dark blue. And then the last frame right here. It's always helpful to figure out the order if you are using, a pattern that you're new with, or even if it's your own pattern and you've just never assembled it before. It's always great to do this before you actually put it together to make sure that you like how this looks. Now let's say I didn't like the dark blue, I can go back and I can cut this out again in whatever color before I start putting it together. Really easy to do. So now let's flip it over and we're going to start applying our foam dots. Now what I usually like to do is once I've got it assembled, like you saw, I flip it over and I start pulling out the bottommost layer, and then we're going to add the foam dots over here on the side. And that's helpful because then you can make sure that your foam dots aren't going to end up somewhere that is going to be visible. Now when you put them on, it's really helpful to put them near some of your features. That way you can make sure that those parts don't sink and they stay nice and elevated and give you that dimension. That's especially helpful if you're going to do something like, let's say, add fairy lights to it or LED lights or anything like that. It's really helpful if you've got some space in there for the light to come through. It looks just so much nicer. Alright, now these can be a little hard to get off sometimes, but just be patient. This is a really quick and easy project, so a couple extra moments to get these little foam dots off is not too bad. Alright, so now you can see I had a few in between here, in between the features. Now I'm just going to make sure that I've got at least one across all the edges of the project. Alright, so we've got the first piece. Now I like to make sure that they are really centered properly. So before I push it down, I just pick it up kind of like that, line it up, and then push on those foam dots to make sure that they are indeed in place. Alright, so that's our first layer. We're going to do exactly the same thing on all the other layers, putting the foam dots around the edges as well as on a few of the features. And I'm going to fast forward this so you can see what it looks like at the end. Alright, there you go. So everything is now connected, and you can see there's definitely some space in between the layers, but it's not going anywhere. And the next step is going to be putting this inside of our shadow box. Alright, so our shadow box is made into a few parts. We've got the main frame here, and this is a thinner shadow box than some of the other thicker ones. So we don't have the inner piece that you would normally need to take out. We've just got the one piece here, and then our backing here. So what we're actually going to do is we are going to glue our project to this board right here, and then we're going to put that inside of our shadow box. Alright, so for this I'm going to use my trusty glue that you've seen me use instead of some of my card making and cardstock videos. We're not going to need a whole lot. We just really want it to stick the backing and not move around.